Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at chapter 2 of book 1 from Bello Gallico. So again, this first book of Caesar's famous work is really centered on the Helvetian Campaign, which is the beginning of the Gallic Wars. So like I told you in the previous video I made, the Gallic Wars are a really famous war of the Romans against who they're calling the Gauls, right, and all the different peoples within that region. And we're talking about 58 to 50 BCE. So where we're really focusing on the Helvetian Campaign, though, is in this region that I've highlighted in the circle. And again, this is repetitive from my first video if you saw it. But what we're getting in this book is a look at the whole geography. And we'll talk again about why Caesar's doing this, because you have to remember the De Bello Gallico, the Gallic Wars, is a work of persuasion. So he's writing this after he's already conquered this group of people, the Helvetians, and we have to understand, why is he writing it this way? Why is he explaining it like this, like what's going on? But what you're seeing in this map are the three divisions he's marking out as Aquitania, Celtica, where the Celts, right, the Gaul, you might say the Gauls, and Belgica up at the top, the Belgians. And then you have this group, the Helvetii, that we've got marked here, kind of in that gap between the Alps and the Germans off to the east. And what we're going to do in this section is really understand why they're about to move, what's going on, the background of what's going to set off this war. So like I always tell you in these videos, the first thing you want to do before you dive in too far is get the vocab under control. So you can either find a commentary, which will give you a lot of vocab help, or you could just read through it and write down any words that you don't know, and just have kind of a list of it. What I always tell my students to do is the read and reread method. So read through it once, mark down any words you don't know, any grammar you don't understand, look all that up, and then go back and read it again. And the more you read it, the words will start to sink in, the grammar forms will start to sink in, and you should hit a place where you can read it without needing the dictionary. Right, and once you've gotten there, where you can read and understand it, you're in a really good place. The other thing I'd make sure you understand is the culture, and I mentioned that in my first video. You can look that up, but look up what's going on so you can understand the references Caesar's making. But either way, once you're in a good place, you feel like you have the vocab, the grammar under control, and you're ready to translate, let's dive in and just make sure that your translation comes pretty close to what I'm about to give you. It doesn't have to be the same, but if you're on the right track, you're in a good place. So we start with this. You have apud Helvetios, longe nobilissimus fuit et ditissimus Orgetorix. So right off the bat, we have a specific group of people, the Helvetii, right, which is the main group of people in this book 1, right? So you have among the Helvetii, there was, or you can even say was by far, longe here is the adverb, really means by far. So by far the most noble, there's your superlative, nobilissimus, and the wealthiest, the most wealthy, ditissimus, was Orgetorix. So you're saying, or Caesar's saying, that among this group of people, by a long margin, the most noble and wealthiest was this leader, Orgetorix. Then you have Massala et Pisone consulibus regni cupiditate inductus coniurationem nobilitatis fecit et civitati persuasit, ... right? He keeps going, we'll do it on a different slide. But it's saying he, meaning Orgetorix. Here we have an ablative absolute. This is very common in Caesar when he's marking the date, right, the year of when people are consuls, right? So what you have here are two names in the ablative case. You have a noun in the ablative case. The word that's missing here is really a participle. You're saying being. So if you put this together, you can translate it as with X being Y is kind of one way to do it. But when it comes to the consuls, you can almost say when, but you could say with Marcus Massala and Marcus Piso being consuls, or when they were consuls. Either way, it's a side note to tell you what year you're looking at, because in the Republic, the Romans date each year by who the consuls were. Then you have inductus, meaning Orgetorix is induced. It's a perfect passive participle. So you could say he, meaning Orgetorix, having been induced or drawn in by the cupiditate, by a desire, regni, of kingship, you might say, of royal rule. That's genitive, and cupiditate is ablative, right? It's telling you, it's going with the passive verb, or in this case, the participle, right? What was he drawn in by? It's a desire of kingship. So right off the bat, Caesar's saying that Orgetorix wanted to be a king. So he made a coniurationem nobilitatis, a conspiracy of the nobility. So the idea here, or the accusation from Caesar, is that Orgetorix starts getting all the nobles among the Helvetii, and he starts making a plan, right, a conspiracy. And then you have persuasive, he persuaded the state. Now, persuasive, persuare takes the dative, right? So you're saying almost like he was persuading to the state, but you could just say he persuaded the state. Now, since we have the persuasion, but we don't have a quote of what he said, you're looking at this indirect statement. In this case, it's an indirect command because he's persuading someone to do something. So now we go to the next slide. You can see that it starts with the ut clause, right? This is how you know you're getting the indirect command here. So he persuaded the state, ut de finibus suis cum omnibus copiis exirent. So he persuaded them that they might depart. Exirent is an imperfect subjunctive. You can tell because you have the infinitive exire with just an nt, a verb ending on the end of it, right? So imperfect subjunctive. You could almost say this, translate this as he persuaded them to depart, or kind of more literally, he persuaded them that they might depart, you might say, de finibus suis, from their own borders, with cum omnibus copies, with all their supplies, right, with all their stuff. So he persuaded everyone to leave. And it says that so again, it's kind of persuading them, you might say. And you have the indirect statement here of per facile esse, right? So you're almost saying like he persuaded them that it might be per facile, very easy, right? It would be very easy. And again, the essay, you might say it was easy is maybe a good way to do it. And then you have this causal cum clause here. Since is really how you want to translate cum. Since praestaret, they surpass. And again, because it's the cum clause, you have the subjunctive here, right? It's another imperfect subjunctive. They surpass overall, omnibus, over everyone, or they stand out above all, you might say, meaning everyone else, virtute, in virtue. So he's saying, since we, the Helvetii, or they, right, Caesar's reporting it, they stand out or surpass all others in respect to virtue, right? He persuaded them that it was easy, potiri, to possess. So you're saying, totius Gallii imperio potiri. The potiri part is your deponent infinitive, to possess, imperio, command, right? Potiri goes with an ablative often. To possess command of all Gaul. Right? So he's telling them that this is going to be easy. Don't worry about it. We're going to be able to take over all of Gaul, totius Gallii, because we stand out above everyone else in respect to virtue, right? Our bravery. Then he keeps going, and you have id, hoc facilius eis persuasit, quod undique loci natura Helvetii continentur. Okay? So it's saying persuasive, he persuaded them, right? Or you might even say hoc, because of this. You have sort of the ablative cause happening here. So it's because of this, he persuaded them, eis, more easily, right? More easily. And the kind of missing word here is sort of facere, to do. Id means this. So when you put it all together, it's almost like he's saying he persuaded them to do this, right? More easily, hoc, because of or on account of this. Meaning, that we're so far, far in terms of virtue. So again, you could almost say like on account of this, he persuaded them more easily to do this. That's what the it is doing there. Because undique, on all sides, the Helvetii, right, there's your subject, continentur, they are contained. It's passive, right? So they are contained by what? Natura, by the nature of the place, literally, natura loci. It almost means like by their geography is kind of one way to do it. They're contained by the sort of nature of their lands, right, of their geography. So Caesar's making an important point here. He's saying that they want to get out, they want to control everything, but he's saying they're stuck because of the geography around them. Then he's going to describe what that geography is. And you have una ex parte flumine reno latissimo atque altissimo, qui agrum Helvetiam a Germanis dividit. So he's saying literally like from one part is what una ex parte means. You could almost say like on one side, kind of makes a little more sense when you're talking about geography. So maybe you say on one side, and the missing word here, I put in parentheses down below, is continentur. They are contained by flumine reno latissimo atque altissimo. They're contained by the river Rhine, the very wide and altissimo, very deep Rhine River. So they're stuck on one side. You can't get across the Rhine. Even today, right? The Rhine is a major river. And back in ancient times, in the Roman times, it was a very big obstacle. Now, there is sort of a little foreshadowing. I'm not sure if Caesar knew he was going to do this yet, but you're going to see he does cross the Rhine, and it makes it all this more miraculous that he's able to do it. But the Romans knew the Rhine River is a major obstacle, right? And it's the Rhine River, qui, which, right, the relative pronoun is going back to flumine reno, which divide, it divides the agrum Helvetium, the Helvetian land, you might say, a Germanis, from the Germans. So this is a border between the Germans and the Helvetii. You have the Rhine River, which is very wide, very deep. They can't really go that way, right, if they're going to go anywhere. Then you have altera ex parte, monte jura altissimo, qui est inter Sequanos et Helvetios. So literally it says from another part, or you might, again, translate this as on another side is probably a better way to do it. So on another side, and again, you're implying continentor here, they are contained by Monte Jura. So it literally says the Jura mountain, but it's really talking about the range. So they're the Altissimo, the highest Jura mountains, you could say, even though it's singular, it's talking about the entire mountain range. And the Jura mountains are a branch of the Alps, right? So they are very high, right? So they're blocked on another side by the Jura mountains, right? And it's the mountain range which is, qui est, inter Sequanos et Helvetios, which is between the Sequani and the Helvetii. So there's a group called the Sequani on the other side of the mountains, and I'll show you a map in a second. They can't go basically north because there's a giant mountain range there. So to the east, I guess it would be northeast, you have the Rhine River, and to the north or northwest, you have this mountain range. Then you have tertia, right? The third part is really what's going on here. So again, the missing words, the ellipsis here is tertia ex parte. So on a third part, again, continentor, they are contained by Lacu Lamano, by Lake Lamanus, which is Lake Geneva in modern times, right? And by the Flumine Rodano, by the Rhone River, which qui, again, we have sort of a relative clause here, it's referring back to the Rhone River, qui provinciam nostram ab Helvetis dividit, which divides, dividit, provinciam nostrum, our province, meaning the Roman province in modern day southern France, ab Helvetis, from the Helvetii, right? So he's given you here a really important geography lesson. And I'll come to this slide so you can see it. The land of the Helvetii, this is a little bit of an older map, but it's one that floats around in a lot of kind of commentaries on De Bello Gallico. The Helvetii are inside the box. If you look closely, you can see the name there, Helvetii. So in that northeast part, you can see the Rhine River, right? That's blocking very wide, very deep on the other side of the Germans. So they can't go that way because we already saw in or chapter 1 that they're getting attacked by the Germans all the time, right? The Germans are always attacking them. So that's not it. If you go northwest, you have the Jura mountain range. You can see it labeled there, sort of that left side of the box, the biggest side of the box. The mountain range is big. They're in the Alps, right? And on the bottom, you can see Lake Geneva, Lamanus Lacus, right, is labeled there. So Lake Geneva blocks them there. And on the other side of it, in orange on this map, that's the Roman province, right? You're getting into Roman territory. So Caesar's point is the Helvetii have nowhere to go. So they can't go south. That's the Alps, right? Southeast. You can't go northeast. You can't go northwest. You can't go southwest. Where are you going to go? They're literally boxed in on all sides. And there's a couple ways to take this. You can either say that they're in a really tight spot and want to get out, or like Caesar's saying, he puts into Orgetorix's mouth the idea that they can go off and conquer all of Gaul, right? We're so brave, we can get out. And we'll talk about what's happening here with sort of the manipulation. But for right now, just look at the way Caesar's describing it. It's correct. The Helvetii are in sort of a gap of the Alps, and they're surrounded on all sides. They have nowhere to go. And remember, what he's not mentioning is that the Germans attack them all the time from that northeast corridor or across the Rhine. Then he keeps going, and you have his rebus fiebat ut et minus late vagarentur et minus facile finitimis bellum inferre possent. So because of this thing, you might say, because of this reason, his rebus, right? Because on account of these things, or this reason, you have fiebat, it happened, is kind of one way to translate. And you got sort of a result clause here. It happened with the result of that is kind of what ut means. But you could say it happened that vagarentur, right? It's deponent. But they wandered, right? Or they wander minus late, less widely, and minus facile, less easily. So they're not able to move, right? So it's saying because of their geography, they're not able to move, literally wander around, vagarentur. They can only do it less widely and less easily. So you can't go anywhere, and it's not easy to get anywhere. That's the point. They're boxed in. They're able to wander less widely. Sorry, the minus facile is going with the second part. So, and less easily, possent, they are able, there's your imperfect subjunctive. They are able to wage war, inferre bellum, there's your infinitive, right? Complementary infinitive, they're able to wage war, finitimus, on their neighbors. So they're not able to wander around, right? Vagarento minus late, less widely to range and wander, and less easily to wage war. So we can pause here, we're going to talk about it, but what a weird way to describe what they're doing. He keeps coming back to the warfare, and he's saying they want to wage war, they want to wage war, they want to do this. Orgetorix wants to take over everything. This is part of the manipulation, right? He's telling you that they really want to go kill everyone, but geography stops them. He's making them sound extremely aggressive, which, you can take it for what it is, but you are being very subtly, or in this case, overtly manipulated by Caesar. The way he describes them is interesting. And I'd point out again, when he's writing this, he's already conquered the Helvetii. So one of the questions you should be asking is, how does he know this, right? How does Caesar know what they want to do, or all this information? It's a good question, right? But this is what he chooses to tell us. Then he continues, and you have qua ex parte homines bellandi cupidi magno dolore afficiebantur. So for this reason, right, qua ex parte, you could just translate it as for this reason, that'll work, right? Because of this reason, maybe you could say. The homines, the men, cupidi, the desirous men, or you might say the men desirous of fighting. Bellandi here is a gerund. It's the verb to fight, and you have the genitive form here, so you're looking at a gerund. So translate it as fighting would be fine, and kind of get you in the right place. So it's saying that they're, and again, think of how he's described them. What an interesting way to describe people. They're literally desirous of fighting. Like, sure, maybe, right? This is the way he chooses to describe them. So the men desirous of fighting, afficiebantur, they were afflicted with great sadness, right? Magno dolore. So he's saying that the Helvetii, the homines, are really sad because they want to fight. They're literally cupidi bellandi, desirous of fighting, and their geography prevents them from doing this. This is all a very deliberate way of describing this group of people, and Caesar is making it sound like they're really sad that they can't go kill people all the time, right? They just want to go fight. They're definitely described in an aggressive tone. Then we continue. You have pro multitudine autem hominum et pro gloria belli atque fortitudinus angustos se fines habere arbitrabantur. There we go. Qui in longitudinem milia passuum, and you have the number CCXL, in latitudinem CLXX, X patebant. So pro here means because, when you have kind of the pro going together. And it's just saying because of this and because of that is really what's going on. Okay. So he says, because of this, because of and because of is really what's going on here. So he's saying because of the crowd, the multitudine, pro goes with an ablative noun. So because of the crowd, however, of men, hominum is your genitive plural, and because of the glory of warfare and of like bravery, right? So he's describing them, right? There's a crowd of people, there's a multitude of people, and this glory of warfare that is kind of calling them. You have arbitrabantur, they judged. It's an indirect statement set off by this deponent verb, right? So arbitrabantur is imperfect deponent, so translated actively. So you could say they judged or they were judging. Since we have that thinking verb of judging, but we don't have a quote, you have an indirect statement here. So you're looking for an infinitive. They judged that, you could say. They judged themselves, say, to have habere fines angustos, narrow borders. So it's saying they judged that they had narrow borders, is how you could put it into English. It's an indirect statement, okay? So because they have all these people and they're so hopped up for the gloria belli atque fortitudinus, right? All these warriors, their boundaries are too narrow, right? That's the way Caesar describes it. They don't have enough room to expand. And he's putting, and again, the question is, how would you know this, Caesar, right? He doesn't necessarily know. This is what he's telling us, right? And it's saying the borders, so the antecedent of qui is really angustos fines. So they had narrow borders, which, right, qui, they patebant, they extended, you could say they were extending, either way. They extended in length, in longitude, you might say, milia passuum CCXL. CCXL is 240. It's literally 200 CC, and then L is 50, take away 10, right, XL. So 240 thousands of paces, milia passuum. So remember, a Roman mile is how far you can walk in 1,000 steps. So when he's saying 240 thousands of paces, he's really talking about Roman miles, right? That's what he's getting at. So it's saying that in length, right, their borders were 240 miles, and in latitudinem, in width or latitude, 180 miles. CL is 150, then you add on XXX, right, 30. So he's describing how wide the borders of the Helvetii are. And again, he's got oddly specific numbers here. So when you're dealing with numbers like this, it kind of feels like he knew, or he had someone scouted, or he measured it. This is his number. I'm not sure where he's coming up with this, but it makes you think that Caesar spoke to somebody who was able to tell him, yeah, this is how much land we have. Or he sent out spies or someone, traders, and they knew exactly the dimensions of the Helvetian land. But it is an interesting note that he's telling you exactly how wide and long it is. Okay, so at the end of the day, it pauses here, right? Chapter 2, but he's laid out an interesting description of the Helvetii. And remember, I told you these are the people that we're really talking about or focusing on in this book. So here's some questions to think about. One, why are we still getting the geography lesson? It's important. Why is he doing this? He's trying to explain it so he can manipulate you a little bit. How is Orgetorix described and why? Remember, he calls him the richest and the richest and most powerful man. Like, why would you describe Orgetorix in this way? Right? What are you trying to get at? And then he goes on to say that he's the most noble. That's how he describes him. He says he's desirous of a kingdom, right? So he's giving you the reasons of why Orgetorix does what he does. How would you know this, right? It's kind of an interesting question. Think about the reasons he tells you for leaving. Do you believe him or not, right? So Caesar says they're going off with Orgetorix to conquer the world, right? All of Gaul. Do you believe that? I don't know. It's an interesting question. In chapter 1, he told us that the Germans are attacking him every day. Kind of seems like that's a better reason, but you take it for what it is. Caesar wants you to believe it's to take over Gaul. And then you want to think about how would it help him to describe him like this, right? So I have a note at the bottom. A lot of modern historians now think that the Helvetii were escaping German aggression. Right, seems to be true. Why wouldn't you describe it that way? How does it help Caesar to describe it not them as refugees, but as an invading army? Think about how that plays. How would he know all this? I've asked you that before, right? How does he know the Helvetian plans? We'll see in a little bit how he might know, but he's giving it to you almost as if this is exactly what happened. He wasn't there. It's an interesting question. Why does Caesar describe the Helvetii like this? They're very aggressive. They want to conquer. They're desirous of war. Again, think about it. He's already conquered them. So if I keep telling you how warlike these people are and how great they are at fighting, what does it mean if I go and conquer them, right? Think about that. You want to think about the wars between the Germans and the Helvetii. Where did they go? Where are the Germans, right? He describes them in these chapters. Who seems to be the aggressor? It's an interesting question, right? He says the Helvetii want to wage war on their neighbors. So who comes off as being the aggressive party? Interesting question. So when you think about all these, you want to put it together as you translate and understand what's happening here, right? Caesar is giving you a narrative that really fits his own agenda. Is it the truth? Probably not. Right? So think about why he's writing it this way, and then it'll start to make sense why he's giving you such a detailed geography lesson and giving you hints as to what the Helvetii are thinking. It's all a way of getting at the people of Rome who wouldn't necessarily know much about these Helvetii. They've heard of them maybe, but they don't know a lot about Gaul. So if this is your first exposure into who the Gauls are and who the Helvetii are, think about how you'd react, right? How would Joe and the average Roman, Joe Roman, how would they react when they hear about this? That's what you want to think about when you read Caesar. If you have any questions or anything that was a little confusing, I know sometimes I go quick and I probably stumble over myself. If there's anything that you need, put it in the comments below or let me know. I'm happy to help. But otherwise, keep at it. Keep reading it. Again, try the read and reread method. What you want to do is you want to leave Caesar after you read it in a place where you can read it without having to live in the dictionary or in any sort of grammar notes. Once you hit that, you're in a good place. Good luck with it.